Welcome to our first podcast of Altered Crime Time. I am your host, Rubber Ducky, or better known as RD, or Ducky. And I have some special guests with me tonight, Mitch and Spence. Hey guys, how are you?
Hi, Ducky.
Hi, Ducky.
Hey love, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. How much do you guys know, or how familiar are you with the Ricky Hochstetler case? Mitch?
I know just the basics on it. I heard that there was a kid that got hit on a hit and run. It was snowing. There was car parts left behind and never did an investigation on it. Later they find out that they thought it was the cop who did it, and that's why they covered it up, and still till today it's unsolved.
That's a great synopsis. Okay, Mitch, what is it that are you extensive in the knowledge, or what is it that you've heard?
But not as extensive. I was aware of the hit and run unresolved from 1999, but other than that, I'm not really familiar with it. So
I was doing a little looking around in the case when I came across this document. And what the document was written by Dean Strain. So you know who Dean Strain is, correct?
Of course.
Right. So that really caught my eye as to why he would be writing a document regarding the Ricky Hochstetler case. Don't you find that interesting?
Very much. We've always thought it was related somehow.
The document that I found is basically an FOIA, which is a Fair Information Act request for all, and it's extensive. Evidence, investigation, documentation, photographs, everything. It's a full request by Dean Strain in 2016 of the Ricky Hochstetler case.
wow.
So, for me, that was, a moment to pause. I was like, okay, if in 2016, you got to figure 2015, MaM came out at the very end of the year. 2016, the general public has now found MaM, is watching it, and they're starting to make connections and so forth. Would that have had anything to do with the timing of this 2016 Dean Strain document request? I don't know. But what got me was why he would want those documents, and could there be a direct connection between the Ricky Hochstetler case and the Hall-Bach case? Like, is there a connection in some way? So when you look at like how the defense, what their strategic plan was, it was of course we all are very familiar with that trial, and that was that they were suggesting that there was corruption. Lieutenant James Link and Andrew Colborn had misconduct and had conflict of interest and may have tampered with evidence. It was highly suggested that they had basically framed Steven. Link and Colborn are the ones that ended up handling that investigation on the Ricky Hochstetler case. So it's kind of like we start seeing a trickle-down effect of how these cases are being handled. So I went back and I looked at the people's names that would have been core to the 1985 wrongful arrest and bias investigation of the Steve Avery and Penny Bernstein assault, which we all know turned out to be another person, which was Gregory Allen, attempted rape, sexual assault, attempted murder on Penny Bernstein. But who was key to that time frame, of course, were the individuals Tom Kosurik, who was the sheriff, Ken Peterson, who was nothing but a sergeant at the time, Mike Bushman, who was a canine officer, was the deputy on charge that was to guard the perimeter of Steve Avery's home when they went to arrest. So you guys, when you remember the Steve Avery case in 1985, do you remember who Jean Couché the pencil is?
No, I don't.
Mitch, how about you?
No, that's not. Now, I'm not familiar with that name either. I'm sorry.
Okay. So you know when Stephen was arrested, Jean Couchet was the chief detective in Manitowoc at the time. And he decided to do his first artist rendition of what Miss Bernstein was saying. Later,
Oh, I know.
yeah, now you know, Spence. What do you think?
Traced.
Yeah.
100%.
So now, did that jog your memory, Mitch, a little bit?
But there, and it just, again, it just kind of adds up to the scenario they wanted.
But we've got to get to where we know who wanted. When I looked into the Ricky Hochstetler case, I was able to connect some serious dots from the 1985 case of Steven Avery's arrest to the 1999 Ricky Hochstetler case right up to 2005, the Halbach case. I kept getting a core member name cluster of law officials. Like in the Ricky Hochstetler case, here this 17-year-old is coming home in the wee hours of the morning in the middle of January in a snowstorm from eating pizza and playing video games. He's within a quarter mile of the Bill Maher Club, okay? So the Bill Maher Club is a local tavern supper club, and they're hosting Cops Foods like anniversary or celebration, as well as Manitowoc Ice is also having a huge celebration. Now, during the snowstorm in the wee hours of the morning, someone hit this young man with their vehicle and drug him 200 yards. There was cranial fracture, spine breakage, bones breaking. It was horrific. This is a massive accident. To make matters even more heart-wrenching, is he's within a block or so of his own home. As this investigation pursues, there gets to be rumors, even within the own Manitowoc County office, the deputy office, there gets to be rumors even within that. It's possible that Robert Herman would have been the one leaving this Manitowoc Ice Cops Food Liner party at the Bill Maher Club that would have hit him. A lot of suspicion. And even DCI investigated it. But the way the investigation went is quite telling. Bushman is the first one, Michael Bushman, and he reports he sees footprints in the snow that were suspicious, and he wanted to follow them up in the snowstorm. But for some unknown reason, Bushman goes and gets gas first. He reports that while he's getting gas, within 3 minutes, he's back at that scene, and it's now a crime scene. At that time, the investigation is handed over to Bushman himself, who then puts Robert Herman in charge of finding out more information and doing parts of the investigation. When we look now at 2005 in the Halbach investigation, we have Mike Bushman. And if you watch the barrel video, or if you've done any investigation into the bones, you're going to find out that Deputy Siders was with Michael Bushman when the cell phone barrel was found. But we learned that the entire time that Michael Bushman is there, he has it noted in his own notes that he's at Cuss Road. He's the retired officer that arrested Steven Avery in 1985, and he shows up out of retirement during the conflict of interest, during the lawsuit, put in charge of the search team.
Wow, that's very interesting.
It just wasn't Bushman. He was like they claimed he was technically on reserve status in 05, and it was over there, and he was just really causing that diversion for that one day.
Yeah, there is a lot of people that bring up that he was on reserve and so forth, but not according to the CASO report.
And he was only on duty like one day. Is that correct? That went during the
2 days.
2 days?
Yeah, 2 days. And he shows up and is immediately put as, quote unquote, the A-team. You gotta love that, right? So I got to thinking, you got Mr. T, right? In the A-team. Is that Tom Kasurik? All right, so with the Ricky Hochstetler case, you got Tom Kasurik as sheriff. Is also the same sheriff that Steven Avery kind of says when they say, well, who could be framing you? You say you're being framed. Who do you think's doing it? And Steven's like, well, I don't know. Maybe it's that sheriff, that Tom Kasurik. So, you got to look at that. Tom Kasurik shot his own brother in the head. Charges were never filed.
Did they find it as an accident or something?
I don't know. I just know that the brother did not press charges.
Oh, he lived.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and he didn't press charges.
When was this?
I don't actually know. We should dig more into it, but I know that's true. I know there's a huge thing about a lot of unsortly claims going on in the Kasurik home. So you got to wonder, you've got this Tom Kasurik, he's sheriff. Obviously, with Tom Kasurik being the sheriff, he is ultimately responsible for the arrest of Steven Avery, and that's what you see in the original report. When Steven was arrested, it says, and I'm reading this right from that 1985 arrest report, it says the night shift commander, Ken Peterson, was advised that the subject should be taken into custody, and suspect Steven Avery was ultimately taken into custody from his home at approximately midnight and transported to the Manitowoc County Jail. The clothing that he was wearing at the time was confiscated as evidence, although he was wearing short, cut-off jeans, which does not match what the victim indicated the suspect would have been wearing at the time of the assault. Also taken as physical evidence were pubic hair samples, combings, and nail scrapings. All of this evidence was either taken or turned over to Sergeant Ken Peterson. Subject was then given his Miranda warning for the second time, this time by Sheriff Tom Kasurik at 12:54 a.m., and he signed the Miranda warning waiver indicating that he was willing to speak with me regarding this investigation. He was informed that he was currently being charged with attempted murder and questioning regarding the incident. Steve Avery denied any involvement in the incident, admitting nothing. Stephen was allowed to go back to his cell. However, he was informed that there would be no bail allowed for him tonight and that he would not be allowed to make a phone call since his wife was already aware that he was being held at the Manitowoc County Jail on charges. Also, he was not allowed a phone call since he is using his family as an alibi for his whereabouts on January 29, 1985, and I wish to question them on July 30th, 1985, without affording Stephen the opportunity of establishing a phony alibi. I will also attempt to obtain a search warrant in the morning hours of 7/30/85 for the clothing that was reportedly worn by the subject at the time of the assault. Any telephone conversation the subject may have with the outside prior to that time may jeopardize obtaining the evidence needed in the search warrant. Signed, Kasurik, Sheriff. So Ken Peterson at the time is just a sergeant, and Tom Kasurik's the sheriff, and they're arresting Stephen. Well, when you jump to 1999, when Ricky Hochstetler is hit, Tom Kasurik resigns, and guess who becomes sheriff at that time? And Ken Peterson has just been the one arresting Steven Avery. Then in the Ricky Hochstetler case, Ken Peterson's the one that is stating that he believes they couldn't get up to speed from the Bill Maher Club to do as much damage to Ricky Hochstetler as was reported, and so therefore he's not going to investigate any of the officers that are at the Bill Maher Club the night of the party. We've got the same names. Now let's jump forward to the 2005 Teresa Halbach case. And guess what? Guess where Ken Peterson falls now?
Tell me again so I can laugh.
Ken Peterson, sheriff now.
Jeez.
Yeah, because as soon as the Ricky Hochstetler case is over, or I shouldn't even say over, just started, the investigation gets started, Kasurik drops the hat. He's done. He resigns. He hands that sheriff position over to Ken Peterson, who is the sheriff all those years, all the way up. As the Halbach case happens, Peterson, guess what he does? Follows the same footsteps Kasurik, and he resigns. And he hands it over to Robert Herman. With suspicion completely around him, even DCI, Department of Criminal Investigations, investigated Robert Herman for the Ricky Hochstetler case. Now Robert Herman is the sheriff in the Teresa Halbach case. Now, are the names starting to kind of connect a little bit for you guys?
Oh, 100%.
It's just, Ducky, is almost comical because it's just their idea of how they handle things. It's a pattern, and it just continues from 85 up to '05, it's like I said, you can't write this stuff.
I totally agree.
Very odd. Same players over and over. the fact that they cover things up. Okay, when you're the sheriff, though, would you not be the lead on most cases?
Yes, you would. In 1985, Judy Dvorak was Sandra Morris's very close friend. Now, Sandra Morris is the lady, the cousin of Steve Avery, where they had the tiff and he ran her off the road and pulled a gun. Now, Dvorak's her very close friend. So would you think it'd be fair to put Dvorak as the lead investigator on the 1985 Penny Bernstein case?
Oh, that would be huge conflict.
Conflict of
100%.
interest, yeah. But that's what he did. That's what Kasurek did.
Definitely.
If you jump to the 1999 Ricky Hochstetler case, Mike Bushman is appointed as the lead investigator. Guess who he chooses to investigate all the car parts, all the evidence of the actual hit and run?
Who?
Robert Herman, the guy they suspect did the actual accident, who later is sheriff, yeah.
And then him having a salvage to cover things up better.
You got that right. You got that right. Okay, now we're going to jump ahead a little bit, guys. So from 1999, we're going to also talk about Link and Colborn. So Colborn gets that Brown County call where the gentleman is saying, hey, we've got a Gregory Allen. And by the way, he does state the name. They were quite aware it was Gregory Allen, not just an inmate. Gregory Allen, an inmate, has confessed to rape that one of your inmates is serving time for. So at that time, Colborn, he takes it to Link. And Link takes it to his boss. And guess who Link's boss is at the time? Couché. Now remember, this is Pencil Couché. He's the one that drew Steven Avery. Couché is the one that is the boss of Link when they get the information that it could possibly be Gregory Allen, not Steven Avery. Could have saved 9 years off of Steven's sentence, but at that point, if they would have followed up on that, but they didn't. Then I think it's interesting that Link and Colborn and Couché and Peterson are all depositioned just like the week or so before the Teresa Halbach disappearance. And guess who they put in charge? Manitowoc puts in charge of the investigation of the Halbach case in the beginning.
Who?
Lincoln Colborn. So you see where I'm coming from? It's like, okay, obviously we have a conflict of interest in 1985 with Dvorak because she's the best friends of a previous victim. But they put her in charge.
It just amazes me, Becky, right there. Obviously, like Spence said there, the words conflict of interest don't seem to be in the law books or the police manuals over there with any of these three cases. And it's kind of like a 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon kind of thing going on here because you just got everybody is related to each one of these cases in some fashion. Wow.
So in the Ricky Hochstetler case, Deb, the mother, went after years, couldn't take it anymore. She goes to ask to see the file after her and her friend had turned in evidence that was of car parts laying in the snow. They had turned it in years before. She asked to see them, and they were missing from the file. So we have missing evidence. What do we have in the Avery case, you guys? Somebody want to address what's missing in the Avery case?
Everything.
What's not?
Yes.
There's also suggestion of tampering of evidence that was being investigated by the DCI in the Ricky Hochstetler case, where they were switching pieces of evidence. I don't know about you guys, but look at the Avery case. Do you see where we have swab switching and I mean, even Zellner's talking about the groin swab possibly being switched and called a hood latch swab.
Right. It's yellow in color.
Oh my gosh.
And that would be for the massive, hike.
Yeah.
DNA results.
Yeah. Like you're saying, the results were so out of proportion that it would have had to be, I don't know how many times he would have had to open the hood, they said. So why do you think that Dean Strain filed a formal request for all information regarding the Ricky Hochstetler homicide?
it's because of reasons you've just stated yourself. Like he's seen the same implication that you've seen.
It was said at one point that Steven made mention that it was one of the sheriffs that had hit the Ricky Hochstetler case when he was out.
Ducky, they knew what was coming, and of course, somebody asked me one time, said, why would they set Steven up? And I'm like, well, I'll give you 36 million reasons why they would set him up. And, it was good. He was going to win. There was no question about it. And they had to discredit the lawsuit. So, perfect. Let's, charge him with murder.
They can't possibly just think that, we're going to sit tight and we're just going to hope something happens so that I don't have to give a deposition. And lo and behold, a murder took place and they're going to pin it on Steven Avery. What that suggests is pre-planned. Do you guys know anything about Michael Bushman and his history?
I don't. Not really.
No, I'm not familiar either.
Just as far as, the retirement. Oh, I've just been looking into him a little more, like news clip.
Okay.
No.
He married Ann Pfeiffer. So you may have heard of Pfeiffer Funeral Home, which is where Carmen Botwell's remains were taken.
Okay.
Gotcha.
And then Bushman shows up out of retirement on the 8th, and he's in charge, and he finds a suspected burial site.
Right. And they have Lincoln Colborn guarded, and they're not even supposed to be there.
Right. Exactly. That's who Bushman is. Now, Cops Food Liner, interesting enough, Scott Tadich's dad was part of that franchise and owned one of the large Cops Food Liner in Manitowoc. So, kind of interesting, huh?
I'd say, yeah, definitely.
So when we look into the Ricky Hochstetler case, something else is interesting is Bushman hands off his investigation. When he retires, he hands it off to Link, okay? James Link. So now Link's in charge of the investigation. Now Link gets asked by Deb, the mother, what has DCI said about this case? Have you heard from them? And so forth. That DCI wasn't interested in the case at all.
Oh, of course.
So
they never are, right?
Deb decides to investigate herself and calls DCI. They'd never heard of the case. Link had not even reported it to DCI.
Wow.
And DCI got involved immediately. So we can see where Link is very comfortable. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. He absolutely told the mother DCI wasn't going to touch the case. So Link was lying. Let's look at him in the 2005 Halbach case. Mitch, you want to kind of have a go at how much you feel Link contributed to the investigation?
Well, let's say, didn't Link and Colborn, or they've been called Bert and Ernie, find the missing license plate?
Link was there, but a firefighter found the license plate, but Link was along for the walk with the guy.
He did find the bullet. Colborn found the key, correct?
Yep.
So
Siders and Bushman found the electronics.
kind of funny that nobody in Calumet finds anything of value, right?
Right. Just for a little sidebar note, remember when I said we kind of want to pay attention to the little names? One of them happens to be Deputy Joust, spelt Jost. Interesting enough, he is one of the key investigators in the Ricky Hochstetler case. He's the one that's supposed to be guarding the electronics barrel in the 2005 Teresa Halbach case. But I think Joust is also the one that finds the bones, the first one to notice bones. It all boils down to the exact same people in 1985. Tom Kasurik, Ken Peterson, Detective Couchet, Bushman, Robert Herman, all those individuals in 1985 all show up in the exact same way in 1999 in the Ricky Hochstetler case. And when the Ricky Hochstetler case, the investigation begins, Kasurik retires, Peterson takes the place of sheriff, Robert Herman becomes undersheriff, Bushman moves up. 6 years later, we've got the Halbach case. Peterson's the sheriff. We have a new change of guard. We have Peterson handing off to Robert Herman, and we have the undersheriff step in and so forth. And it just goes on and on and on. Every time there's a major high-profile publicity case where there's suspected corruption, they all do a change of guard. Now, the only change of guard that hasn't happened that I know of is that Sherry Culhane has remained through all 3 cases from the State Crime Lab.
Very interesting.
So what are your thoughts, Mitch?
Well, it sounds like you said, we got all these players in all 3 of these major cases. They play a little game of musical chairs, like it's going to fool anybody, who digs in a little bit on this. It certainly, it just doesn't add up at all. And especially, when we get into the Teresa Halbach case, Manitowoc County was supposed to not even have their hooks in this thing whatsoever. And there's no question they ran lead on the investigation and everything. So, there again, you got add a little more corruption on top of that too. But, again, they're all involved in 99 and they're all involved in 85. So, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that there's something just doesn't add up there on all 3.
Right. I totally agree with everything you said. What are your thoughts right now, Spence? What are you thinking?
I'm on the same page as everybody else. I think that it's a sick game that they play. And I think they all talk about it after work, and they all know the ins and outs of it, and they make sure that they're on their P's and Q's, but they can't cover up everything.
Right. Well, it kind of makes me really look at it, and I go, okay, so if we have the core members that are facilitating the corruption, it doesn't mean that there is everybody involved. It just takes the core members that are pulling the strings and putting the things in place. And when you look at it, Spence, you brought up the fact that it was all Manitowoc that was producing evidence.
I know. And that should have been a red flag from the very get-go.
Absolutely. I personally cannot any longer see this as an accident that gave an opportunity for the police to act. From here forward, for me in this case, after really studying this, and I think that it says a lot when you look at the situation of the actual timing of the depositions, is Kosurik is next. We're at the end of the timeline. If 4 more days goes by, Kosurik's going to have to give his deposition. I am suspicious that this was a pre-planned event. And what really draws me to even wonder more is when you have the victim herself being reported by Tom Pierce, her boss, saying that October 31st was going to be her last night at Auto Trader. 3 weeks before October 31st, the victim herself predicted and pre-told that her last day of work for Auto Trader would be the day of October 31st, which coincidentally happens to be the day she goes missing.
Well, it's like they say, the cops, anyway. There's never coincidences, right? Never. They take everything for what it is. And I think that applies here. I do.
That's a great point.
And it's almost like the underdog. It's like, okay, here, you earned your stripes. I'm going to go now. Here you go. And then that person's also no longer going to ever speak because he's promoted, of course, right?
Correct. Now he's not only promoted, but he's held responsible for the news stuff that's going to go down. In 2005, their calling was one of the arresting officers in Steven Avery's case in 95 to serve as a leader, the A-team, and they're the ones that find a shallow grave when he's married to Ann Pfeiffer, who owns a funeral home, which happens to have a crematory.
I was getting ready to say that they also do what in?
Well, yeah. And look at Mitch, when you look at the bones, what do you think when you hear that no matter what pile these bones came out of, they're all uniformly cooked?
Yeah. That's just too easy, it just fits their narrative, at all. And, exactly, and of course now, are they human or are they not human, and we gave bones to the Halbachs, and now they're animal bones. There's always an excuse, and it just doesn't. It doesn't add up in our world, but in their little world, obviously, it's what they. It works for them.
And that would have never happened in Stephen's fire pit. No way, never.
Well, and it scientifically couldn't have. Even
And
in
they
a burn
never
barrel,
took-
I just can't get over the burn barrel. I've done a couple tests of my own in a burn barrel, loaded it up. You do not get an even burn.
And Stephen has a smelter on his property. Come on, right?
Well, that wouldn't, in that phone call we were listening to, Spence, remember that part where even Steven says it wouldn't have taken much to fire that up.
Right.
I mean, it
And
could
then
have.
not only that, but they didn't even take pictures. And then I recently just heard a phone call. On the phone, Stephen was with his mom. It was a jail call that was recently FOIA'd. And she talked about how they had sheep. And she said, I bet I know what the bones they found in that pit. Me and Pa, or Paul, whatever she calls him, she said that there was sheep got a bad disease and they died. And they had chopped them up and put them in the pit. I bet that's where those bones came from.
Wouldn't this be, I'm going to go there with everybody. I'm just going to take y'all somewhere that my mind goes to. This is complete speculation, and I have the right to do that as well, even though, a lot of the times we're talking about factual stuff on our channel. This is speculation. I'm giving you my disclaimer ahead of time, but I'm going here. All right. So when I look at Teresa Halbach's death certificate signed by Michael Glazer, now he's another individual that goes back all the way to Bushman time. He and all these gentlemen that we're talking about went to high school together at Lincoln. The thing is when Michael Glazer signs his death certificate, it is 5 months prior to the autopsy of Teresa Halbach. Yet autopsy box is checked. So we have a big problem with that. Number 2, the spot where the funeral home signs Teresa's death certificate is dated. Please pay close attention to this date. November 10th, 2005. Is it possible that when Colborn allegedly found that that it actually had Teresa Halbach's body in it, that they gave the body back to the Halbachs at that time, the Whiting Funeral Home signed for it, on the requirement that Teresa Halbach's body be cremated by the family, and they're allowed to have a couple bones to use for prosecution. And these are the only bones that were actually sent to the FBI, and the rest were substituted with animal bones in order to present to a jury a full spectrum of bone. I doubt Leslie Eisenberg in her testimony simply because she refused to admit that was a human pelvic bone when actually there was no way around it being a human pelvic bone. It absolutely is. And the fact that Leslie Eisenberg, the anthropologist that was inspecting these bones, had just in March before the trial of Steven Avery misidentified infant bones because they were actually bird bones, and she had misidentified them as a fetus that had been cut from a mother. And that's a Christine Rudy case. So Eisenberg, she's lost complete credibility for me. I can't go by what she says in any means, because she can't tell the difference between animal bones and human bones, and that's what we have in this case, is a lack of understanding which bones are human and which are not.
When you're talking about your possibility, your theory that she was in the car, that adds up very well with after they found the car, there was a big shindig about not opening up that car. And they covered it up with that big tarp and guarded it with their lives that looked like there. And, because no one wanted, looked inside at all. That was the big deal. Don't open it. Don't open it. So, if that was, the possibility of her being in there, it would certainly explain the Halbachs, why are they not thrown up in an uproar, with the possibility that they're, in the news, what they say, oh, we gave animal bones back to the family and it's not your daughter. I certainly would be all over the media and, fuss and saying, this is not my child. And, we've heard nothing from them at all.
Right?
I think that could be, but I don't necessarily believe that. I think that the car was planted there. So I think that they had found her in the car prior to planting the property.
You got to look at this too, Spence. Is what I was thinking is if Colborn comes along and allegedly he gets that message from the guy, Ramlow or whatever his name was, Kevin Ramlow. He goes, finds the car. It's got her body in it. They're not going to want to be doing a lot of stuff right there in 147. So if Colborn took the car down to Deer Camp, because that's the closest he can get to Avery's, they're going to need to plant that car they're going to have to get that body out of that car. Is that where this, this burial site, shallow burial site comes in? Is it possible, that they remove her from the car, they lay her in the grass to get the car pulled out of there, they take the car, they plant it up there, the Hallbucks get the body. What's interesting to me is the timeline of the 7th. We have Cuss Road. We have all hell break loose down there. We've got DCI. We've got Calumet. We've got the ambulance. We've got entire team from Andrew Colborn to Lieutenant Link to Remaker. We've got everybody and their brother, all hands on deck, if you want to say, on Cuss Road on the 7th and 8th. We know that Siders found the cell phone barrel, and he's right on record, he is with Bushman all day. Bushman's got exactly where they are, which is Cuss Road, by the GPS statement. So we know they're on Cuss Road. They find the cell phone. We have that call where they're saying Teresa Halbach, they're saying cell phone, they're talking burn barrel. This is starting to make sense that this stuff all would have been found on Cuss Road. In that case, is it possible that what would have happened then is she's in the car when the car is found by Colborn. He stashes it down there at deer camp to get it closer to Avery. The Cuss Road thing happens is when they find her, because that would have been, let's say they find her on the 7th and now Whiting Funeral Home signing the death certificate on the 10th. Would it have been something a family would accept if they were said, well, listen, we know who killed, this is kind of the MO that was told to Penny Bernstein. We know who did it. We just got to get you to say it. This is what was basically given to her. They didn't even put in Gregory Allen in the original lineup or in the photo lineup. They totally left the real suspect out of both lineups, and they just kept showing Steven. Now, he was the only one that was shown to Penny Bernstein twice. Why? To make him look more familiar, someone she'd recognize. So if you look at that in the way that they did the Bernstein case, is it possible that they went to the Hallbox and said, we have found your daughter, she has been murdered, we just need you to cremate the body and give us a couple pieces and we'll make sure he goes down for it? Is it possible that that's the same MO they pulled with Penny, they pulled with these victims?
Well, I've always thought that they've known more, because it's just the reaction to everything. That would explain why they're not really mourning, because they're so worried about saying something wrong. That would explain why they have the one son being the spokesman. That would explain everything.
Yeah.
About, giving something up, that they're mourning within their home. You know what I mean? Not in public, because they can't. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Totally
It
agree.
would make so much sense that way.
Mitch, what's your thoughts?
It would certainly add up when it came to their reactions during the trial. I mean, if you look at the video of them, they were emotionless. No one was crying. No one was trying to get at Avery and try to strangle him. They were just like sitting there dead themselves, so to speak, back that time. But they were just emotionless to the whole thing. So, if they already knew what had happened, they already had their child. They're just trying to, be there for a show. It certainly is a possibility. And again, with the timing as well, you said with the timing of the death certificate and everything, it's certainly a strong possibility.
Well, the other thing that comes to mind, of course, is Lynn Kaczynski's notes, where this secondhand writing that he's got notes on there, H1, H2, photos. And we know that there's 150 plus photos that are property tags H1 and H2. These pictures are supposedly, according to Lynn Kaczynski, a body measurement dig site.
Yeah, I 100% believe they had some sort of I don't know exactly how. I believe that they had a body. They did. I don't know the details, of course. We'll probably never know, but we can speculate, that's for sure.
What about you, Mitch?
Yeah, remind me, where was it where the dogs went nuts over, was it on Cuss Road or was it at the camp?
It was
Cuss Road?
The dogs The dog hit on the back stoop of the red trailer at deer camp. Then it proceeded to track very intensely, quote unquote, to Cuss Road and was trying to get across the police crime tape when Sheriff Pagel had to be contacted to get permission. And he told them, no, the crime dogs, the cadaver dog, couldn't go on to Cuss Road because Cuss Road, quote unquote, now keyword, was a crime scene.
Yeah, it's just another million thing. One of the things that doesn't add up at all there for those words, but it certainly that feeds into this right here. Absolutely, with what the dog was doing, the dogs were doing at that time.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, the dogs, they're cadaver dogs. Cadaver dogs are going to hit on two things. They're going to hit on human blood or human remain. That means there was a dead body somewhere down there or human blood down there. Also, another thought that comes to mind is Wiegert and Fassbender were telling Jody, I think it was Wiegert, was saying they were going to show pictures of a body.
Isn't a cadaver dog, don't the blood even have to be dead? I don't know how to explain it. A cadaver dog doesn't hit on someone's alive blood, right? It has to be dead. The person, how do I say that without sounding...
Yeah, I know what you're trying to say. I get what you're saying. I don't know how to word it either. That I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it has to be post-mortem blood or not.
I'm pretty sure I do know that part.
Yeah, because otherwise the cadaver dog should have hit in Steve's trailer on his blood and it didn't. In fact, the cadaver dog didn't hit anywhere inside Steven's trailer or outside of around his trailer at all.
Exactly.
Apparently she was shot in the garage, but she did not bleed. You know, it really bothers me that this death certificate is signed November 10th, 2005. It's got the autopsy box checked, which you can do an autopsy on bones. Obviously, we have one. It doesn't take place and it's not signed until May of 2006.
And in a high investigation like this, you don't make mistakes on paper like they have. You just don't. And they do it time and time and time again. And they blame it on, oh, it was just a, mistake. I could see it happening once, twice, but over and over continuously it happens.
Well, even DCI had mentioned, according to Zellner's latest filing, that DCI mentioned to Radon that they knew that the RAV had traveled through Cuss Road up through Deer Camp to where it was found.
Oh, really? I missed that part.
Yeah, that's in her filing. Stated this according to Radon's affidavit that he gave.
Interesting. I did not know that. Then I just also heard the picture that Teresa took of the van was on the internet. A guy called about that. How would she get it on the internet if he killed her and she never, left the property, right? And just time and time again, these instances come up where it's just nothing adds up, nothing.
Well, for me, I'm starting to think that what possibly happened is that the situation was that they actually did find a body in the back of her car, that it's possible that they gave it back to the haul box. They basically requested 2 pieces of bone from her just to be able to prosecute with, and that would have discreet, most digestible way for the family to grieve properly in that situation. They'd have everything they needed with 2 bones.
I could see that scenario happening easily. We're never going to get this guy. He killed your daughter. Come on, we have to do this. He's going to get away with murdering your daughter.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Can you imagine? And trust the law enforcement.
It would explain, like I said before, it just would explain a lot, just from the get-go of their behaviors, the family's behaviors.
Yeah.
Like I said before, there was no emotion. And like Spence said, there was one spokesman for the family, and that was it. And their lack of reaction recently with the bones stuff going on, and, it just does. Absolutely.
It was like they had to get through this trial, and then they would, then we will
Very robotic. Very robotic.
Exactly. Well, it's funny because Dolores and Steven brought this up, Dolores especially, when they were on the news.
Okay, so like you're saying, they brought this up. Okay, so that was when Ma Avery said something about she believed that Teresa was still alive or something. Wasn't that part?
Exactly, because they didn't show any emotion and it just didn't make sense. It just didn't to her how they were just so robotic.
Okay, you guys, so on the 3rd, she was reported missing, quote unquote. We also have the RAV seized on paperwork on the 3rd. We have Steven reported as a global active on global activity. He's reported as a suspect for non-negligent homicide. That's all on the 3rd. We have Carmen Botwell passing away on the 3rd. All kinds of stuff happens. Kevin Ramlow reported it to Colborn. Colborn would have found that vehicle prior to talking to Steve.
I can get with that, honestly. I really can.
That's okay. Yeah, well, a lot of it, of course, is new to me, but I was thinking about what Spence said earlier about the mistakes, and throughout this whole thing. And if you remember that old phrase, they say when someone commits a crime, they make 30 mistakes along the way. Yeah. And let's put in all the core players we're talking about here who we believe are involved in 85 and 99. Multiply that. I mean, that certainly explains all the mistakes.
Yeah.
Because they're just they're all doing them because there's multiple people involved. So absolutely, and I agree 1,000% with Spence. If blackmail is a very big motivator. You do this for us, or we're going to Stephen went for 18 years. Hello.
And I guess we're going to kind of close it up now and just say, all right, well, the big question that is left hanging in the room is, if this was a pre-planned event, would the cops themselves have facilitated this, or would they have blackmailed someone to do the job?
To me, it goes back to money with everybody. Steven Avery was getting ready to be a very rich man. He was going to take, over the property, the Avery salvage yard. He would have had control over all of his brothers who had been there for how many years, taking over while he was in jail. Then the police were getting deposed, and I've heard that was going to come out of their pockets, correct?
Well, not only that, but it could have resulted in criminal charges as well. How about you, Mitch? Did you want to add on a closing note?
Right. The insurance was not going to cover the lawsuit. It was going to be coming out of their pockets. And, those guys had pensions, which now, Colborn and a few of the others are living off of now.
Yeah.
Because they retired. So it certainly was going to cut into their livelihood. Like you said, possible criminal charges were going to come out of this as well. And the exposure, the negative. And if that hit the fan, then the 99 stuff could have came out. Then the 85 stuff at that time could have came out. So it was going to be a wrecking ball. So exactly.
Yeah,
so,
like pulling the piece of string that unravels the carpet right from under their own feet. All right, guys. Well, I want to thank you both for joining me tonight, and we're going to do more of these as we go. I want to thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night, everybody. If you
didn't do the crime,
you shouldn't do the time. Oh, wow, we did it so good together. All right, thank you guys so much.